Hey, this is Mike Diercksen from Proactive, and you're listening to the Building Bite podcast. Tune in as we spotlight our guests, David Slaugenhoup, Senior Vice President, and Joey Nawa, Executive Vice President of Environmental and Construction Professional at RT Specialty. Our episode today is focused on pain points and best practices, how to navigate rectification claims. For more information on this episode and others, please check out the Building Bite at www.buildwithproactive.com.
Welcome to the Building Bite podcast, a podcast for construction contractors, owners, and insurance professionals, where you'll hear from the experts firsthand about key topics that'll help you be successful. I'm Chris Epps, a Vice President with Proactive, and I'm joined here with my co-host, Mike Diercksen, our Manager of Marketing and Business Development. We welcome our guest today, David Slaugenhoup and Joey Nawa. David is a Senior Vice President, and Joey is an Executive Vice President of Environmental and Construction Professional at RT Specialty. Start with you, David. How are you this afternoon?
Oh, we're doing good. Doing great. How are you guys doing?
Excellent. Joey, how about yourself?
I'm wonderful. Never a bad day in my life. Thanks for asking.
Fantastic. That's rare in our business. So that must be feeling pretty good. Mike, how about yourself?
I'm doing good, Chris. Excited to get on the roll here with Joey and Dave and see where we go.
Well, let's jump right in. Dave, Joey, definitely a pleasure to have you guys on the show. Before we dive in, I was hoping maybe you guys could give our listeners a little bit about your background and your career path and kind of what led you to your current role at RT Specialty. David, we can start with you.
Yeah, so I graduated Penn State and then started into the environmental consulting realm. Spent about 10 years at a national firm here in Hamilton, New Jersey. And then made the switch over to environmental and construction professional insurance with Jeff Slivka and Jeff Lafer and Tim Farrell and Joey here. So it's been a great ride. Just celebrated 11 years, so it's been great.
That's a term. Congratulations on that achievement. That's pretty rare, honestly, for a lot of people in our industry. So 11 years is a serious commitment. Joey, how about yourself?
Yeah, thanks, guys. Graduated from Temple University in Philadelphia, got an internship at RLI Insurance Company, and it led to a full-time hire there where I was underwriting architects and engineers, professional liability insurance, worked my way through managing a team, and realized I was a little bit too much of a solutions-based underwriter, was more fit for broking. So came over to the team here, also just recently passed 11 years with formerly New Day underwriting managers, now RT Specialty.
Yeah, no, it's a solid term. And honestly, you guys kind of took different routes, but it sounds like you both kind of fall into the regular thing of kind of falling into insurance a little bit. Didn't necessarily start that way, but like most of us, you found yourself in insurance and you're sticking around for a while. So that's great. Well, guys, diving into our topic for today is pain points and best practices, how to navigate rectification claims. With that being said, I think it would be beneficial to our audience to maybe take a step back, a quick refresher on what exactly rectification coverage is and why it's important to contractors at all different tiers. So can I tee that up to you guys? Can you give us a brief overview there?
Yeah. So rectification coverage. So during our discussion today, it could mean either rectification coverage or mitigation of damages. And this coverage is found within a traditional professional liability policy. And, taking a step back and asking why it's even on the policy, go back 15 years ago when rectification first came to be about. And you can almost just envision that discussion with the contractor, their retail broker, and the claims professional at a carrier. And the claims person is probably wondering, hey, didn't you see that issue with the survey? Didn't you see that, professional act error or omission? Why did it take so long? And so the traditional professional liability trigger is a third party trigger. Mm-hmm. And you're going to have that unfortunate discussion with the owner or your client to say, hey, there's an issue at the site. Can you send me an email or could you? I need to be able to trigger my professional liability policy. So That's the discussion that we always go back to as to why even rectification came to be about. And that's one of the beauties of the coverage, is that it being a first party coverage, you don't have to have a third party sue you or bring some sort of allegation against you. And so, rectification can preserve that relationship with your client or the owner who's going to give you the next 10 projects down the line. So, so that's sort of the 50,000 foot review of, rectification and where it came to be about.
Yeah, it's a great reminder, and honestly, it's a wonderful policy, right? It truly creates a partnership between the insured and the carrier, and with that first party, you're able to jump on these problems very quickly. We've had guests on the show mention running towards those problems, so you can truly mitigate what could be a future $5 million loss down the road, and nip it in the bud at a $1 million loss today, so to speak. So moving forward, contracts with professional liability includes rectification, as you mentioned. And while many contractors are looking to adopt the policy, I think there's still a lot of questions out there, right? Maybe outside of the E&R top 25, top 50, just on how to best utilize that. So, Joey, are there some pain points that you see with the insureds when they're going through that process?
Sure, Mike. Yeah, I'd say probably 4 primary pain points that we've identified as a group. And not to oversimplify, but it really starts with awareness of the product, particularly for those non-top 25, top 50 contractors. Not just awareness from the construction and the design professional community, but also the underwriting and the broking community. Many retail brokers across the nation have a book of construction clients that unfortunately may not know that they either have the product or that the product exists at all. So there's the understanding of assessing the risks that are tied to design, tied to engineering quality, tied to contractor qualifications, use of materials, technological, innovative advancements that are brought into design and construction. So I think challenges really starts with assessing the complexity of risk. Secondly, I think it's just understanding the sheer benefit of the first party coverage, not just the benefit, but the conditional requirements of the insured in order to see the benefit of the coverage. There are very intricate steps in triggering this policy, some people may find them to be somewhat rigid, not just from a reporting requirement, but the open dialogue needed between the insured and the insurer. So it's the reporting, it's the communication, and it's understanding the approval requirements that the carrier needs to go through, take their time and review to be mindful of for a successful outcome to a rectification claim. Navigation, I think, is probably our biggest, I don't even want to call it a challenge. I'd call it an opportunity for us, because every product's different, right? And navigating the different definitions, the different reporting requirements, some of the exclusions that carriers apply just to this coverage part is very important, particularly when considering the delivery method portfolio of a contractor. Some carriers like to sublimit this coverage. Some carriers like to attach a co-insurance to this coverage. Some apply differing definitions under the liability coverage part as they apply to the first party coverage agreements under the policy. So it's really navigating and overlaying some of those differences against the insured's actual delivery method portfolio to ensure that they're seeing the optimal benefit of coverage. The fourth is hitting a hammer on the nail of the reporting provisions. And I'd say one of the biggest pain point that contractors and design professionals suffer is violation of those reporting requirements. When the insured begins the fix or the rectification before seeking clearance or approval from the insurance carrier, it can lead to an unsuccessful rectification claim. There's an inherent nature I've found in specifically in my history of underwriting architects and engineers versus now primarily broking contractors and design professionals, a difference in mantra in the desire to fix and make better versus notify their broker and their carrier. So I think a lot of the ENR top 25, 50 truly understand, and I'm not taking anything away from the construction community, but this product keeps on evolving. So what needs to keep evolving alongside that is the education that the underwriters, their brokers, the insurance professionals have, not just to the C-suite and the risk management suite, but levels on the project management level and beyond.
Couldn't agree more, Joey. I mean, we see that a lot. And I think where contractors struggle, particularly outside of that ENR top 50, as you talked about, we see in that scenario, perhaps you don't have a dedicated risk manager, or those claims frequently get deferred to the project team, who likely have never seen this policy or don't know the reporting requirements of the policy, and they do get tripped up there, end up potentially leaving money on the table, and it's just not an optimal recovery. And two, it's not, in that regard, not really aligned with, I don't know, contractors' normal operations. Look, I've been a project manager, project executive. Your initial inclination, as Mike said, is to run toward the problem and fix it, because you're incentivized to do so. You got, extended cost of downtime. You've got liquidated damages, and you're constantly watching the schedule. Your initial inclination is to just dive in, try to fix that problem and get started as soon as you're aware of it, which runs a little bit counter to the reporting provisions of most of these policies. And I think that's where we see most contractors get tripped up. So I guess maybe shifting gears a little bit in shedding a little light on that, what do you guys suggest, and how do you guide your insureds through that issue in terms of just early engagement and notification provisions and that sort of thing?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question. And we hear from the retail side, the contractor side, to the claims professionals, different approaches. One standard approach is if it looks to be a GL, general liability type claim, to go ahead and to notify the professional liability carrier as well, that your GL policy typically has the 2243, the professional liability exclusion endorsement on it. Now, you may have 2279 or 2280, your means and methods and your design and build endorsement, but that's going to be coverage for BI and PD types of damages only. And so we always highly recommend, when putting your GL carrier on notice, to at the same time go ahead and put the professional on notice. And on the back end, if the concern is, hey, I don't want to put it on the professional because I don't want my rate to go up at renewal, we've been successful with the underwriting community that essentially, until the carrier pays out a substantial claim, that they're not going to hold it against that insured for reporting potential circumstances or potential claims. So our recommendation is go ahead and do it. Err on the side of caution. Then on the flip side, having some sort of late reporting provision that may exclude coverage underneath the professional.
Yeah, no, I think it's definitely better to notify. I think most carriers would tell you that if you're able to identify a problem and solve it quickly, and it doesn't become a claim, or or it's minimized because of that, they're actually happy about that, as opposed to going to increase your rates because you did a good job. That's a little counterintuitive that way. But we spoke a little bit though with that, as far as reviewing the policy, really understanding those things. But there's a lot of work to be done before a claim ever happens. So shifting focus a little bit, how do you help guide and coach your insureds through the coverage for best practices before the claims occur, Joey?
Yeah, Mike, you said it. Don't wait until there's an issue to have a good understanding of how the coverage works.
Right.
Have your broker, your underwriter, your specialty intermediary come out to your office, contractor, have them come out and educate, again, not just the risk management team, but the project team on how the coverage works. Don't wait till there's an issue to start reading your insurance policy.
Right.
And if you're a project manager, you're probably not picking up an insurance policy. So lean on your broker to come out and educate. Lean on your underwriter to come out and educate, right? They enjoy that. We love it. I can tell you that. After something happens, after a rectification claim is reported, or we identify an issue that could foreseeably lead to a rectification issue within our policy, the insureds, the contractors should contact their insurance brokers and keep a very open dialogue, very open line of communication. Begin the documentation process right away, right? And I know Proactive is there to assist in that process, but regardless if you all contract with that insurance carrier or not, the more documentation, the more information, the more open lines of dialogue, the better it's going to be. Understand the 5 W's, the who, the what, the where, the when, the why, right? And I think kind of back to what Dave mentioned, to really throw an exclamation point on it, regardless of ultimate outcome as to damages, whether it's a loss intended for a property or builder's risk policy, for a general liability policy, it's such a good practice to notify your insurance broker and your insurance carrier as soon as practicable. That's a very common phrase within these policies, even if the likelihood of it triggering a design error, a construction management, a professional error being so slim. So I kind of reflect on one of the seasoned underwriters that we work with, and they handled a very large contractor alongside us, and every single renewal, I kid you not, there were probably 14 pages of loss circumstances reported. And I think to your junior underwriter, they're freaked out. But this seasoned underwriter, every single renewal would tell me, they are my favorite client. They are my favorite insured, because they understand the importance of communication. They encourage, a good underwriter encourages communication, because they don't want to be having those tough conversations either.
Yeah, I think that's maybe one of the false notions we see a lot with respect to particularly SDI and rectification coverage, but especially rectification coverage as people get more familiar with it, it is that notion that, claim notices are going to be somehow punitive or held against you. If they don't develop into claims, your carrier is actually happy to be informed and not blindsided by that messaging. So, we see that from the carrier side, and I can assure people that is a very true statement. It's not super intuitive. It's not generally how people think about insurance carriers, but it's absolutely true in that they're not going to hold that communication against you. They would rather know than not know. And it's not, if they don't develop into claims, not going to impact your loss history.
Yep. Yeah, and just to briefly touch upon the reporting provision for specifically rectification, keep in mind the safe answer is, before you incur any costs, notify your carrier before doing anything. That's 95% of the policies out there require notification to the carrier before doing anything. Now, there's a handful of carriers out there that, underneath a scenario in which immediate bodily injury or property damage is about to occur, then you can, the contractor, incur costs to throw some money at the project so that bodily injury or property damage doesn't happen. So that's a benefit that we keep our eye out, Joey and I, whenever we're securing a policy for our insureds. There's little benefits, which right now that's maybe 3 carriers out there within the marketplace of probably 20 carriers that offer this coverage, that add that additional benefit. And again, the contractor is going to have to prove to the carrier that, hey, it would have been a covered rectification claim anyways, but due to the timing, we needed to incur costs now so that, a person didn't get hurt or that parking garage didn't collapse. So we see a huge benefit in that reporting provision, allowing some of the some of the carriers out there afford their insurance.
Yeah, I think too, Dave, you raise a good point, because given the type of coverage and the type of problems that it's there to mitigate, you frequently are in a position of either incurring additional, physical loss or, human loss of life, potentially from, a catastrophic failure. But certainly, the intent of the provision is kind of or the policy is kind of a stitch in time saves nine mentality, which almost infers that this is going to get worse if we don't handle it. And usually that get worse part is in terms of at least additional physical loss if you don't get in there and start rectifying the issues. So yeah, we definitely encourage that early communication to facilitate, having your carrier say, yeah, we see how this could potentially get worse. Go ahead. You have our blessing. We're not going to, it's not going to impact your coverage. They may least a rough order of magnitude estimate to sort of get that work moving and understand what the level of effort is required. But absolutely get engaged early, notify them, and start having those discussions so that you're, not potentially going to leave money or coverage on the table later.
Yeah. No. Hey, so we wanted to ask you guys, because we'd be remiss if we took up all the time here. We'd really want to tap into your guys' thought process as well. And you guys see a ton of rectification claims. So could you guys elaborate on a recent success story? I mean, I know there's a number here in-house that we could riff on, but would really like to kind of turn the tables and ask you guys to take it away and sort of elaborate and help the audience through a recent success story that you guys helped out on.
Yeah, we've got quite a few of those. I would say generally our successes kind of fall into just a few categories. That I could give you examples of. One really is trying to coach up the insured, once notice of a claim is made, because, Joey, going back to what you said earlier, a lot of people who are tasked with preparing and presenting these claims, that's not their day-to-day business. They don't know what they're doing, but they approach it the way they would, say, a change order or, maybe perhaps a builder's risk claim that they're more familiar with, as opposed to, first-party rectification claim, and understanding the exclusions and terms of the policy. So once we get the notice, we jump in early, and I think our greatest successes are coaching them up on just a minimum amount of documentation you're going to need to trigger the coverage and get a response from the carrier in terms of a pre-authorization. Even if it's not the full pre-authorization amount, it's enough to allow them to do what they do, get moving, get in and start fixing the problem so that the policy operates as it's intended to prevent bigger problems downstream or prevent that problem from growing. So I would say generally those are our largest successes. I think too, on the back end, as we're reviewing claims, I would view it more as an enhancement of the process. When you do this day in, day out, and we've got some guys, that's all they do is review these type claims, there are things you notice that are missing. It's like, when an estimator's preparing bids every day, he's got a much firmer grasp on what needs to be in there or when something's missing. And it's kind of the same thing where you're reviewing claims like this every day. You realize, like, a lot of times retesting or those sorts of issues get overlooked, and can be a large cost category for a contractor that you want to make sure you get those into your pre-authorization estimates. And so a lot of times we're pointing out things like, hey guys, have you thought about X, Y, and Z? Looks like you haven't included, or is this buried somewhere in your estimate? Scopes of work that perhaps they just, they got blinders on trying to fix this problem. They haven't thought about the next 3 steps downstream, and we'll try to bring that to their attention. And again, make sure they're not leaving money on the table, because that impacts the customer-client relationship between the carrier and the insured. And, oftentimes you guys as the broker kind of stuck in the middle trying to help navigate and negotiate that. But at the end of the day, we all want it to be a good experience. Everybody wants the carrier wants to pay what they owe in terms of fixing this problem, and the insured doesn't want to leave anything on the table, and they want to get to the money as quickly as they possibly can. And we try to facilitate that. I think sometimes I feel like an interpreter of construction means and methods and policy language, and trying to marry that up and make sure we all meet at a successful place in the middle. But I would say majority of claims we get that we look at are missing some element or some component of scope that the contractor just hasn't thought about yet, hasn't gotten to yet. And you don't want to come back and continually have your claim value grow and take repeated bites at the apple there. If you can go ahead and get that pre-authorized up front, and then you've got the bandwidth and the cash flow as the contractor to do what you need to do to fix that problem. And I think those are our biggest successes. But we've seen, for instance, just as a specific example, we've definitely seen things like retest costs for, say, water testing on buildings that had envelope issues because of design problems, and the retest, which can be a huge expense, not being included, and then having to go back and ask for that. We've seen issues where, for instance, there were elevation busts in design, and the contractor has looked at what he had to fix and what he had to move in the building, but had not yet considered all of the things around the property that were also impacted by that elevation. If you change this, there's 6 more dominoes that fall that cause you to have to adjust the size of swales and ditches and retention ponds, and the dominoes just kind of keep falling. And then it's like, and then there's tie-in to city services and things like that. That it's like, sometimes you just have to call a timeout and say, hey, let's walk through this step by step and make sure you're not missing anything, so that you get the pre-authorization you want, you get the cash flow you need, and you have the money to go fix these issues, and you're not leaving cash on the table. And that's kind of what we have found really leads to a successful navigation of a claim, is getting to the cash flow and not taking too long to do it, such that it's a painful process for the insured. So that's really where we try to plug in, and where we found the greatest successes is really kind of facilitating that. And it gets easier over time. The more of these claims we do, the more quickly you can get dialed into things that are missing or things that are going to be potential bottlenecks in that process. And we try to alleviate those as best we can. So that probably sounds like a proactive commercial, but it really is. I mean, that's really kind of the missive we're given from the carriers, is really try to make this a seamless, painless process for their insureds. And if we can do that, that's what success looks like for us in terms of rectification coverage.
Fascinating, yeah.
It's an art.
I was just going to say that, with it being a first-party coverage, you're on the same team, right? Everyone's benefit is when this claim gets wrapped up quickly and efficiently. So the sooner you can pull those resources in with your broker, your carrier, and the various vendors that they use, the sooner that project team, who maybe has never seen a rectification claim or has seen one in 10 years, they get to access people that have seen it every day, like Chris mentioned. And having that repetition and understanding only helps everyone through the process.
Like you said something there that a team, right? I'd say in a perfect scenario, you've got a team. Right. Sometimes you find out who your real teammates are. So I would caution the importance of partnering with a carrier that truly understands, that truly has the history, and has been, and the claims manager, the claims adjuster, that's speaks the language of professional liability and design errors and construction management, because unfortunately the talent pool is only so big, right? So, and everyone's got to start somewhere, so navigating that process is so important. And we find that partnering with an intermediary like Proactive, partnering with an intermediary like our group at RT Specialty, just helps navigate that process to understand those that are providing coverage, that it's not their first rectification claim that they've ever been through,
Right. As much as it's a technology and insurance-based business, ultimately comes down to people, right? The people you work with, people on your team, the people you're collaborating with. So definitely an important thing there. But guys, this has been such a great conversation. We really appreciate your time, your expertise on the matter. One thing we like to do on the show is leave our audience with 3 key takeaways. Would you guys be able to leave us with your 3 takeaways from today's conversation?
Oh, yeah, you bet. So we tried to come up with an alliteration, and the best we could come up with is educate, engage, and embrace the process, the 3 E's. So we talked about, educate from it's a great coverage to have in your coverage portfolio, but you got to know how to use it. You got to know how to trigger it. You got to know the reporting provisions. You got to know what's in that policy form. So, and that comes from your retail broker to your risk manager down to your project managers out in the field. It's a team, and you got to know, and that education process is just so key to overall success of that rectification claim. And then the second E, engage. So it's the same thing. It's the project managers, the people out in the field. They need to be aware of this coverage, that if they start to rectify or fix the issue, that they may preclude coverage underneath the rectification coverage. So that's that engagement from an all-party perspective. And then the last E, that embrace the process. And you guys can give your feedback on this, but this process, it could be a long one. Best case scenario, everyone has all of their information and their ducks in a line, and the carrier can sink their teeth into the knowledge and the information, and they can get to that money flow very quickly. But we've seen rectification claims be upwards of months or even into over a year because it's just a very complex process. A rectification claim is a professional liability claim in nature, so you're likely going to have multiple parties involved, multiple sets of architects, engineers, technical professionals, that everyone has to weigh in on that circumstance. So that last E, that embrace the process. Most of our success stories are when everybody comes to the table calm, cool, and collected with their information in line. The contractor that almost educates the claims personnel as to exactly what their project is and what happened. And it's that team effort that Joey was talking about earlier, that if you embrace the process and treat it as a team, that's going to lead to success. So,
yeah, you raise a good point there, Dave, in that the process can take a while. And, I think it's not, carriers are not unaware that you're typically, whatever you're looking at and that you're going to be remediating or mitigating your loss with respect to a rectification policy is an element of work that probably had a very long design window to begin with, or is a very unique process. And if it took, an engineer 3, 4, 5, 6 months to design this thing to begin with, it's not going to be a 3-day fix on the back end when you're trying to figure out where it went wrong, right? So I definitely encourage, as you say, embracing that process and also engaging the carrier just in those discussions early on. The more informed they are early on, the easier it's going to be to one, trigger the coverage, and two, get authorization for funds to fix whatever that problem is. But due to the nature of the coverage, it's just almost inherent in the work that it's generally not going to be an easy fix. There's going to be there's a design element there that, you're going to have to pick apart and understand and sort of re-engineer to get to a fix for whatever that problem is. So I would echo and put a stamp on exactly what you said there, which is this is not, something that typically is getting resolved in a week. These are the type of problems that take bringing a lot of smart people to the table, a lot of discussion, and a lot of, that just takes time. And that's part of the process. I guess moving even beyond that, Joey, maybe I'd ask you if our listeners are looking to, as an action item, kind of take that first step in terms of implementing these solutions, and you can encourage them just to make that leap, and you can give them one place to start. What's step number one?
Great question. I'd say this could apply to any element of risk, any element of the contractor's perception of risk, any insurance mechanism out there. Do an internal audit of current risk transfer, risk management solutions, assess your subcontractors, assess your contracts upstream and downstream, assess your project profile and your legal teams. That could be said for anything. Don't just audit it once a year. Make it a continual process. Maybe you have a risk management department or a risk management team. Maybe your insurance broker is your risk manager or your risk management team. Make sure you're revisiting this stuff, particularly as design and construction just gets more and more complex, particularly with the increased use of technology. Mm-hmm. With this episode being centered around rectification, we've said it probably 5 or 6 times already, but it's educate and review that portion of your policy. Call your broker, call your agent, get your underwriter out to your office alongside your broker, alongside your intermediary, and educate them on exactly how it works. Because like I said earlier, every product is different.
Mm-hmm. I couldn't agree more. I mean, if there's one thing I would want people to take away from this episode that is really where I think people struggle with the product is that education component. And if you could do that before you have a problem, it's a lot easier than getting up to speed while you're trying to, fix a large problem. So, that being said, we like to hit our guests with a few more rapid fire questions. So we'll throw a few more things at you. Dave, where do you see our industry struggling the most in terms of implementing the coverage through contractors' professional liability?
Yeah, so great question. I think, on the insured side, it's just the knowledge of the product, the guys and gals on the field doing the day-to-day operations, knowing what that rectification claim looks like, and uploading that information to the project manager, who then speaks to the risk manager, then to the CEO. There's a lot of people there that underneath this policy, that responsible insured, once they know about that issue at the job site, that starts the clock ticking with this type of claim or circumstance. And if the people at that C-suite level know of the issue and they don't necessarily disclose it in time and they renew the policy, that's more than likely going to be a declined rectification claim or professional liability claim because they were aware of it and then they renew their policy. So it gets back to that communication and that education that we've been talking about. And then on the carrier side, and this is like anything else, but it's like that faster reaction that we all just really hope to have from our carrier partners. And getting back to what Joey was saying earlier, it's our job to know the markets, and the markets have really forced the carriers to provide some sort of rectification or mitigation coverage, even if the carrier didn't want to. But in order for them to be successful and to be a good product in 2024, you have to have rectification and protective indemnity. So that said, in the 2025 carriers that offer the coverage, you really need to consider who you're partnering up with on the claims end as well. And it gets to the point where, a rectification claim can be super complex. And if they have, a proactive to help them out, that's where we see that reaction time from the carriers really speeding up. So we on our side would love to have the carriers write a blank check within hours of submitting a rectification claim. We know that that's, going to be impossible to do, but that's one of the pain points that we see on these types of claims. So.
Oh, I couldn't agree more. And, given that we work for carriers, I would caution, because there are so many new carriers selling this product now, and a lot of them haven't had a lot of rectification claims. Echoing what you said, that is probably the biggest pain point or frustration point we see on the insured side, is really the inability to drive decision making with the carrier. So for any of our carrier claim managers that may be listening, I can absolutely tell you that is the primary frustration point, pain point, is how do I fix this problem if I can't trigger the coverage or I can't get cash flow moving that allows me to go fix this problem? They don't want to hear on the back end, you didn't notice us, you didn't get pre-authorization. It is part of that is the educational component, letting the insured know what they have to do, to get those faster reactions from the insurance carriers. But there's absolutely, I think, something incumbent upon the carriers to understand, look, that's the intent of this policy. And if you're not following through on that and you're not making fast decisions that facilitate the contractor being able to resolve this problem, you're kind of cutting your nose off to spite your face in a lot of regards, and it's not going to lead to a successful outcome, at least not in the eyes of the insured. So absolutely agree with you there, Dave.
Joey, what are some trends you're currently seeing in the market, either positive or negative, when it comes to rectification coverage?
Yeah, from the carrier's perspective, I'd say they do remain challenged by a slew of issues in relation to this particular insurance grant. A handful. It's prevention of moral hazard. It's a first-party coverage provided under a professional liability policy. So, yes, there's a self-insured retention involved. There's skin in the game involved, but they still want to prevent that concept of moral hazard and getting lazy and utilizing third-tier, bottom-feeder engineering firms, unqualified, uncertified, unlicensed engineering subconsultants, or unqualified engineers, consultants within their own staff.
Mm-hmm.
There's the long tail nature of construction and design related defects that carriers are plagued with, that these errors may not materialize until after a project is complete. That may be more of a professional, like a liability coverage issue, but still something that does impact rectification. Staying abreast of evolving regulatory compliance changes remains a challenge of carriers. Within these policies, there's coverage expansions well beyond rectification, including coverage for not only pollution, but faulty workmanship liability. So I think, these policies started as a one insuring agreement policy, insuring for professional liability. I think I was reviewing a policy the other day that had upwards of 12, 13, 14 different insuring agreements. So it's a lot of stuff to navigate for a claims adjuster, and changes in regulatory issues, compliance issues impact those adjusters. Ensuring that the carrier's charging an appropriate premium for the provision of this coverage. It's just such a highly catastrophic line of coverage, professional liability rectification, that there isn't the volume of actuarial data that a general liability carrier has. So it's really tough to assess the cost of risk. And then particularly for a carrier that's new to it,
Yeah.
And then I think last but not least, it's just the management of the end client, the contractor's expectations. Far too many insurance carriers and their brokers have had to have tough conversations with their policyholders, with their clients, because of a breach of conditional requirements under the coverage part.
Yeah, no, there's a lot that goes into this coverage, and there's a lot of evolving things, as you stated. So maybe the last question here, which is, ending on a real positive here, is what makes you guys the most excited about the work you're doing right now, right? It's a very new, evolving field. What is it that, makes you excited getting out of bed in the morning to go to work?
It's a great question. I think Joey and I love our jobs a little too much, and it's that thrill of finding a solution for our retail broker partners that really excites at least me. And I've been working with this guy for so long that I think we get a charge out of finding that needle in a haystack and finding that solution for that contractor. So we really are sort of underwriters as well as brokers as well. So, and there's just so much, I'm so excited for the contractors of the United States and of the world right now, because there's just so much opportunity. We see strong backlogs. Hopefully, interest rates will stay in check, and that everyone's just going to have a ton of work for the next 10 years, that we can continue down this path of helping out the contractors and subcontractors for our retail brokers. So,
yeah. Exclamation point on everything Dave said. We operate in a non-ISO space, so every single product out there is different. Of course, there's a lot of following, if you will. What the finest form of flattery is imitation, right?
Mm-hmm.
But with that inconsistency in product comes opportunity for us. We always say disruption creates opportunity. Well, so does inconsistency. And with that inconsistency comes the opportunity for us to not only educate our clients and our prospects, but also to bring them a solution that some of them hadn't known even existed before partnering with us. So I'm really charged by that. And yes, I think we do love our jobs a little bit too much.
It certainly comes through. There's definitely a passion you guys both exude just in talking about it, the educational components, and like you said, finding that needle in a haystack is such a rewarding feeling. So guys, thank you again for being on the show today. We really appreciate your time. As you know, this is the Building Bite. So that's building insurance technologies with the experts. Now, if any of our listeners missed it at the Embrace the Process tagline before, I think it's a nod to where you guys are located just outside the Philly area with Trust the Process. So where are you guys getting a bite at today?
Oh, there's a really good, going to do a shameless plug for a cafe here in Hamilton. It's Jersey Girl Cafe. And Joey and I are going to go grab some hoagies.
Nice.
As they say.
Some hoagies.
Yeah. I think you guys up in the Northeast and Rhode Island, you guys call them grinders up there? Or what?
They do. It's weird. I don't. I'm
weird.
from New Jersey too, man. So it's a hoagie. Like that's my mindset. But yeah.
And Chris, what about down south?
They're just sandwiches down here. We're plain and simple, man. But I'll go for one anytime. I don't care what you call it. Now I'm ready for lunch. Well, Dave, Joey, thank you again for chatting with us today. We definitely appreciate you guys taking out the time to do so. If our listeners want to hook up with you after the podcast episode airs, where can they find you? What's the best way to get a hold of you?
Oh, email, phone, LinkedIn. Yeah.
RTECP, Environmental Construction Professional, has a website with a ton of resources, ton of educational material on topics just like this.
Fantastic. We do encourage our listeners to get in touch. So appreciate the chat this afternoon. Appreciate your time. Look forward to maybe having you on again soon and catching up as this product continues to evolve and see how things are going, see how things are changing. But thank you again for your time, and we appreciate you guys.
Excellent. Thanks, guys.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for listening to The Building Bite. This podcast has been brought to you by Proactive. Check us out on thebuildingbite.com, where you can subscribe to our newsletter and follow us on social media for all future The Building Bite news and updates. You can also find us on your favorite apps, including Apple and Google Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, TuneIn, and Amazon. If you have ideas for episode topics that we should cover on the show, or you know somebody who would be a perfect guest, let us know at connect@thebuildingbite.com.